I said, you know what? I'll cut you a deal on the motor for the Cavalier, and you can tell everybody you have a Cavalier motor swap Camaro. My name is Bobby Reynolds. From Committed Car and Truck Club, originally from Beaumont, and I currently live in Kirbyville. I currently have a 48 Chevy Stylemaster that I traded a 66 Crosser 300 that I used to have. My dad had a 46, almost identical. It was identical to this, other than it was completed. And as a kid, we used to drive around going to Spindletop Rod Run here in Beaumont. As a kid, I remember, and you know, I like the muscle cars, but that 66 was just such a big, it was a boat, and I'm more the smaller hot rod, you know, cool. Not saying that the 300 wasn't cool, but the gentleman wanted something that he could drive, and he wasn't really mechanically inclined, so we did an even swap, and I got the trailer of the car home, completely rewired it. When I got it, you could honk the horn and the headlights would come on. It was just a mess. So the suspension wasn't the greatest. It's got a front and rear clip off of an 80 model Caprice, so it had coil springs all the way around. So, you know, that kind of made my mind up. It was super easy to bag. You got cups all the way around, so that's the route I went. Put some 17-inch Riddler wheels that I caught on sale at Jegs, some new tires, and threw some new seats in it, and just working on it a little at a time. Biggest influence was probably my dad. Growing up, I can remember as a kid, probably 5 or 6 years old, we went and picked up a 55 210 two-door Chevrolet. It was a complete basket case. My mom was not happy, but he bought it for $500, and we brought it home on a lowboy, the car, and then 2 other lowboys with parts and crates of just parts among parts. And I can remember being in the garage day on in and day out. Just matter of fact, I distinctly remember one job. The first job that I can remember he gave me was he was installing the brake booster, and he gave me a die nut to chase the threads, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing, but I distinctly remember that job that he gave me to do, and it just little small things like that I remember growing up as a kid in the garage with him. My first custom vehicle was probably my first vehicle, which was a van. I remember riding the school bus home, and we were going down College Street in Beaumont, and I seen this window van at a car lot nonetheless. And I got off the bus that afternoon and told my dad where it was at, and we drove down there, and it was a super solid, all original, straight 6, 3 on the tree window van, and he paid cash for it, $500, and we brought it home. I was a sacker at a Market Basket, sacking groceries, because my parents believed that nothing came free, so I had to pay for my insurance and pay for my gas, and I drove that van about 4 hours. When I came home from lunch that day, I gave him the money for my insurance. You know, being 16 years old, I thought I was cool. Well, straight 6 and 3 on the tree does not like RPMs, and I slung a rod in it after I had it for 4 hours. So I was kind of aggravated, but from there, we chopped the top 6 inches, put a small block 355, 700R in it, and made it a real nice driver, and that's what I drove for years to school. I still have the van to this day, but I had good intentions of repairing it, but it was under 6 foot of water in Harvey, and it's just too far gone. It's just ate up. So I think I'm just gonna have to bite the bullet and just swallow it and just scrap it. I just can't fix it. So the famous Cavalier. I would say that was probably inspired mainly because the whole Fast and Furious thing, but being that the roots that I had with my dad as far as the hot rod and just the old school, I could not come to just having a 4-banger fart pipe, screaming, loud, obnoxious. So I said, all right, there's no sense of putting a V8 in something and keeping it front wheel drive. So I built a chassis for it, put a LS6 in it, rear wheel drive, big billets, air ride, put the 57 Bel Air dash cut down, retro style interior, and apparently it was a hit because I still have people begging me to bring it back. I pulled the motor. I had a 56 Chevrolet Bel Air, and I pulled the motor out of the Cavalier to put in the Bel Air because I wanted to do a twin turbo 5.3, and I got sidetracked on a couple of things. I had some personal issues that I was dealing with. I wound up selling the Bel Air, and then I had a buddy, Chris Pierce, that has a 67 Camaro that he had a 383 with a 4-speed. He wanted a newer style engine, so I said, you know what, I'll cut you a deal on the motor for the Cavalier, and you can tell everybody you have a Cavalier motor swap Camaro. So that was the route that we went, and I used the chassis off the Cavalier on my current van build. I still have the body of the Cavalier, but of course it was under 6 foot of water in Harvey, so it's kind of a touchy if it's worth rebuilding, or because I built the Cavalier, early. I started early 2000. I think I debuted it at Gator Drag 07. It was blue. Actually at the time I had a LT1 motor in it. And back then, 10 years ago, LS swaps weren't very common. They were just starting to come out. So to me, a LS swap Cavalier is cool, but it doesn't have the cool factor as it did then because it's just so popular now. I went to court 3 years ago for custody battle on my children, and it didn't go to plan, and it's been a while since I've been able to hang out with them and talk to them. I do follow my only son on Instagram, and I've messaged him several times on there, just seeing how they're doing and whatnot. And last night was the first time that he's ever replied and said, your current build is pretty cool. So I know when they get older, they're gonna realize and see the true meaning. But yeah, I think he's gonna follow in the footsteps. My dad had always had something custom. Other than a company truck that probably because he couldn't modify, that's the only thing I can ever recall that was stock of his. Just the cars that he had and customized is just astonishing. And I mean, I don't think I could have anything that wasn't custom. It's just the way we were brought up. It's a lifestyle. There's people that argue whether it's an addiction or whether it's I guess a disease. I guess it starts out as an addiction, and then it may be a disease. But I would say I'm addicted to fixing and having custom cars, because the first thing that I see when I see a new car coming out, the first thing I visualize is, man, that'd be cool if it had this, or they need to do this, or it's just the way our minds are, I guess, programmed to think. So yeah, it's an addiction. I mean, I'm either at work or I'm in the garage. There's no in between. I'm rebuilding our house because we lost everything when we lived in Vidor from Harvey, but I don't know. I mean, it's just like, you get the gentlemen that have, their life's all about fishing and hunting. I mean, if they're not working, they're fishing and hunting. And a lot of those guys don't understand, why we spend countless hours and hundreds and thousands of dollars on these cars, but it's no different than paying $100 for a lure that you may or may not work. So I don't, outside of cars, I don't see anything else.